Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, July 28th, 2026, and today we are asking, are we wrong about the history of the transition to agriculture? I love the history days. We are talking Horsenettle and its friends, and we'll journey out to the field and talk about harvesting the potatoes and setting those beds up for garlic. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Till Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the bona fide nerds at Till Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter podcast, season 4, episode 3, or head to tillsoil.com to learn more. I hope everyone is doing well this fine Tuesday. Things are going well here. Got a little rain overnight too, which was a nice surprise. That will lead to more growing. All right, I said we got a little bit of rain last night, but we actually got like a pretty good storm that knocked over a lot of the milpa patch. I heard it. I just didn't think it was this windy. But yeah, the milpa patch, all the corn, a lot of the sunflowers, even our sweet corn over here is it's kind of flattened a little bit. Yeah, somehow I didn't realize that was entirely going on last night. Yep. Usually the surprise in the summer is that the rain we thought we'd get, surprise, ain't coming. But so far this year, it's been weirdly opposite of that. It will now probably never rain again, but oh well, fun while it lasted. Got a little flame weeding done yesterday too, which was, hot, but hopefully the carrots will enjoy that. And we'll do a little field session on flame weeding next Tuesday. Mostly yesterday was a lot of, sending out our fresh sheets and cleaning up and tinkering. So nothing super exciting to report on that front. Oh, I did want to mention though, that we're still thinking of you all in Spain and France going through the wildfires there. Holy smokes. I fear this super El Nino, we're going to likely run into a lot of those sort of tragic stories around fires and droughts and also floods and all the things. So it's a good time to be taking your fire safety stuff seriously. Wishing you all a safe end to this fire and a fast bounce back from it. I mentioned it yesterday too, but if you are going through like smoke or fires or anything big like that this year on your farms or gardens, feel free to send us in photos and videos to share. Nothing quite makes this stuff real than seeing people like yourself going through it. You can upload those or just any garden videos, good or bad, to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. We appreciate that, and I like seeing what you all are up to. All right, so I've been reading this fascinating book recently called Against the Grain, A Deep History of the Earliest States by James C. Scott. And to be clear, I've not totally finished it yet. I do not pound books during the summer like I do in the winter, especially in World Cup years, but I've quite enjoyed this one so far, albeit it's a little dense, but it's quite interesting. And the thing this book sort of centers on is this transition from hunter-gatherer societies into agrarian societies and how long that transition actually took because of primarily just resistance from the sort of what we call hunter-gatherers. Even as a small farmer myself, I am quite mystified by farming. Don't get me wrong, I like doing it, but it frankly doesn't make a lot of sense as a use of time. It's incredibly hard, it's incredibly technical, it's incredibly risky. Like, think of it this way. When we were quote-unquote hunter-gatherers, which again is a somewhat silly classification, but we'll get back to that. But when we were hunter-gatherers, and we were for tens of thousands of years, we had hundreds of things we could eat at any one time. Roots, nuts, fruits, leaves, meats, mushrooms, etc. And if an area got destroyed, perhaps like in a storm or in a fire or by some silly agrarians, we could just keep moving on to another, equally abundant area. But if you grow just a handful of crops, all of your proverbial eggs are in one basket. Not only do you destroy that abundance, but if something should go wrong in the growing or the storing of those crops, poof, there goes your food. Yet somehow, for some reason, that's the system we were like, that's the one I want. We designed our entire societies around that. We were like, yes, to the far more risky agriculture. However, what I like about this book is that it points out just how long we had done things like growing grains and even breeding crops long before we settled into, settled agrarian societies. In fact, there were settlements even when we were hunter-gatherers, which I think gatherer probably makes more sense. There was just abundant food and we just gathered it. But yes, even when we were literally living off the land, we were even able to settle sometimes and stayed there for significant periods of time. Like, yes, there is a version of hunter-gatherers that had towns and stuff. However, for the most part, historically speaking, people resisted fully settling down, especially in an agrarian sense, because it's mostly a bad idea.
disease, overharvesting, power struggles, famine, all the things. For thousands of years, people, our relatives, fought against the idea of agriculture and of permanent states because it frankly just wasn't a great idea. It required a profound amount of work to manage, fields of grain, to protect them over the winter, etc. So you needed more labor, and thus slavery was born. Great idea. Staying put also meant more disease. Staying put also resulted in less equality for women who were now having more kids than they would have in a society constantly on the move, which limited them. Now, here's the thing. I'm a farmer. I talk a lot about farming. I teach farming and market gardening. It's kind of what I do. And again, I kind of love it, but that doesn't mean that I think it's perfect, nor do I think it represents progress. In many ways, I feel like we are still living in the echoes of one of the worst decisions possibly ever made. Yes, agriculture. And I'm always trying to figure out how to remake that decision into something reasonable. So what does that mean? Well, I don't know exactly. Those pre-agrarian societies still engaged in something that could be construed as agriculture, like they would use, the freshly laid silt from a flood to broadcast grain seeds into, for instance. So it looks somewhat like regular agriculture, but they also engaged in a lot of in the natural world, creating rich, robust, and diverse ecosystems, abundant in food that required very little labor. This is what permaculture tries to accomplish, obviously, but often without an appreciation for the economy we all have to exist in, that itself is set up for extraction, not diversity, because, well, it's based on sedentary intensive agriculture. I'm sure there is an answer, and I look forward to hearing what you all think, because like we've talked about before, constraints are where the best inventions come from. And our constraints are land boundaries and an extractive economy. So what say you? Is there a less labor-intensive version of farming that fits into that world? I mean, no-till obviously is part of the answer, I think, but it's not the whole of it. Last thing is that I always feel this sort of deep depression when I get home from vacation. And I do think a big part of that is that maybe we just got it all wrong. Work used to be, for example, funneling thousands of prey into controlled areas, processing them for several days for storage, and then just basically hanging out for the rest of the year, supplementing our diets with wild grains, roots, plants, fruits, and nuts, and that sort of stuff. So before, it was 1 or 2 weeks of work, vacation for the rest of the year. Now it's completely the opposite. Work all year, 1 week vacation if you have the money. And I think if you're one of those people who suffers a little bit when they come back home, from a vacation like I do, it's not because you don't love where you live. It's because maybe we just weren't built to toil all the time. None of us were. So how do we get back to that, or something vaguely like that? Examples? Ideas? Contrarian viewpoints? Maybe you just love all the toil. Let us know. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Horsenettle and other perennial weed battles. Thanks, agriculture. BRB.
Hey, Brian here, Snowflake Farm. So this was one of our burlap experiments. It's not a complete failure by any means, but it has required a lot more maintenance to keep this up than I would have anticipated. So we're pulling weeds out of the burlap about every 2 weeks. But and this was 10-ounce burlap folded over, so it's 2 layers of burlap.
Want to harvest seeds adapted to your farm, but you're thinking, look, I have a market farm to run. I'm way too busy weeding and picking tomatoes. I'm Dan Briesbois, and I'm here to tell you that you can grow seed on your farm without losing your mind. On the Seed Farmer podcast, and in my book, The Seed Farmer, I share exactly how busy growers make seed crops work alongside a bustling farm business. Find The Seed Farmer wherever you get your books and podcasts. Go grow some seeds.
Hey there. If you are sitting there with a burning question that you'd like me to address here on the show, you can do that. All you have to do is head over to patreon.com/no-till-growers and sign up for one of our Patreon tiers. Go to the latest show thread and put the question in there. That's it. That's all it takes. Just because of time, I cannot get to most of the questions that we get on other platforms. So patreon.com/no-till-growers is the way to go to get them to me and get them answered. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Chris Cohen, who writes, quote, I just watched the compilation Weeds show and wanted to see if anyone else has successfully tackled an infestation of horsenettle. We have it growing in the surrounding area, but I suspect it came in with the straw mulch we are using to suppress weeds. It's now fairly well settled in, about 6 beds. I tarped those beds in the spring in preparation for warm season crops, but it hasn't been enough to kill off or really even weaken the horsenettle. I've cultivated it thoroughly as well, but any overlooked root fragments fragment just produces another plant, and the deeper rhizomes laugh at cultivation. I don't really want to take those beds out of production for a year if I can help it. Any advice?" End quote. All right, so great question here, Chris. Now, I'll talk about Horsenettle a little bit, a weed that I've personally dealt with a lot over the years, and I'll also just talk in general about perennial weeds like that can be a bit relentless, even when you pull them deep down in the soil. Now, for those of you without Horsenettle in your gardens, it's not the worst weed to have, but definitely consider yourselves at least a little bit lucky. It will hide beneath larger plants and loves to surprise you with a sharp thorn. If you should accidentally reach down to harvest something unaware and inadvertently grab the Horsenettle. It's a perennial nightshade and will reproduce through fruit, but also multiply via roots. So you do have to take care of it when you see it. In warmer regions than ours, it will be even more aggressive than we have it. So if you have even a little bit and you're in like a slightly warmer region than Kentucky Zone 6B, you really want to stay on it. Now, there are largely two ways to deal with Horsenettle, and neither of them are herbicides. And in fact, many species have developed quite a tolerance to some broadleaf herbicides, which I bet is fun for large-scale conventional growers. The two ways to deal with it are constant cultivations to wear out the rhizomes, and then just constant deep pulling, as deep as you can pull those roots. Tarping will help, but like it is with all perennials, if it's not on there, the tarp, for several months, the roots will store enough energy for the plant to return once you pull that tarp off. A few weeks just won't be enough if the Horsenettle is well established, and that same thing goes for things like bindweed, Johnson grass, Bermuda grass, etc. They need to have a lot of time under tarp and or a lot of hand pulling. The recommendation I often give is don't let those areas where you are seeing weeds like these be where you put crops you barely visit. I like to plant the fastest crops possible in those areas because one, I will cultivate them at least once in their lives really fast, and two, once the crop is out, I will have another chance to kill those weeds. I personally love to use a bed flip as an opportunity to clean the edges of our living pathways and to rid myself of those noxious weeds. So for instance, you could do like a radish or a turnip and then a round of lettuce followed by a round of green onions or beets, and that would pretty much take up the whole season and provide you with 3 to 5 good opportunities to kill those weeds in that year. I will say that when it comes to pulling roots, the better your soil is in terms of decompaction and soil organic matter, the easier it is to do. A really fluffy bed will enable you to pull like 2 feet of Johnson grass root or more, for example, with no real trouble. So in more ways than one, good soil practices are part of the solution. So that's fun. Anyway, best of luck as always, and let us know, listeners, what advice you have. Otherwise, we're going to take one last quick break. When we come back, you say potato, I say nope, the potatoes are out. It's time to get some cover crop in. Be right back.
Hey, Brian here again at Snowflake Farm. This is another of our burlap experiments. The idea was to establish a strawberry bed using hay as a heavy mulch and burlap over top of that to hold everything in place. But unfortunately, the covering up the hay just caused it to fertilize the weeds that were underneath. So as you can see, these are kind of mounded up. That's not hay underneath there anymore. That's just plant sticking up. So we're going to tear all this out and start over.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, so today I thought I would talk a bit about our potato harvest and how I did that and what I'm doing to the soil in those areas to prep for garlic. So again, we will do another little field demo since we are in the middle of the season and there are things in the field that can be demoed. And once again, big apologies to those of you who just listened to this in podcast form. It is available on YouTube if you want to watch it. I think we were looking into how to get it on Spotify as well in video form, so you can just watch the videos there. Stupid internet and all its evolution and weird quirks. Here's me in the field doing the field thing, but this time with potatoes and cover crops. Enjoy.
All right, so I am hauling out the potatoes, and I thought I'd do just a quick little update on that. They did pretty well, all things considered. I mean, you know, at this point they're starting to, like you can see, there's grass. So most of it's in the pathways, which is where I want it, right? I never get rid of the pathway stuff, but it's crept onto the beds a little bit. But you can see these potatoes are done, right? Like they're crispy. So you know, a lot of people would harvest with like a potato harvester, and it'd basically like slice underneath the soil and it'd pop up all the tomatoes. I can't really do that on these beds, even though I have one for my BCS. I can't really do it on these beds. It also does a lot of like slicking, like a lot of damage if it's wet at all. You know, and I could go through and put a shovel in the side and pop them that way. But honestly, the soil is loose enough that I can just sort of pop all the potatoes out. So that one was a little close to the surface, but yeah, and then, you know, get them that way and just dig them by hand. But one of the things is when I do the shovel, the challenge with the shovel thing is that some of these are growing, like, because this part over here where all the leaves are is so nice and moist, like a lot of the potatoes are growing into that. So they're coming up underneath that leaf mold. So if I stuck a shovel in there or down on the side of the bed, it would ultimately just, you know, chop up potatoes, which is not ideal. So yeah, that's kind of it. I'm going through, just hand grubbing them. It's super slow. This is not moderately efficient. Some pest damage there. I don't know what eats potatoes. Like this year, never had anything eat our potatoes, but this year something is munching on the potatoes. This is, yeah, like I said, this is not the fastest thing in the world, but it is a pretty effective way of getting all the potatoes. They look pretty nice. These I think are Kennebec, or I think this is Kennebec. And yeah, that's kind of it. Let me know any questions you have about potatoes, and I'm gonna keep harvesting, listening to my soccer podcast. All right, so the potatoes are out, and the next thing I'm gonna do is I have 5 beds there that are empty right now, and so I'm gonna rake them. I'm gonna weed whack the pathway with the weed whacker. Got my safety goggles, got my ear muffs, so got my rake. So I'm gonna rake everything aside, weed whack the paths, and then I've got this cover crop mix. So this cover crop mix is sorghum, beans, popcorn, chia, there's some crimson clover, there's some, I'm sure there's a couple other things, oh, a little bit of cilantro. Yeah, lots of fun stuff in there. And I don't expect all of it to thrive, and I don't really need it to, because it's just prepping the beds for garlic. So anyway, I'm gonna go do that. Cover crop popping in the future garlic patch.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that little trip to the once was potato field, now is cover crop field. The plan is now to allow that cover crop to grow for about a month until the end of August-ish, then mow it and tarp it for a few weeks, and then whammo, garlic goes in. Anyway, I will update you on all that when we get to that point. In the meantime, I think that's it for this Tilt Tuesday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is the most non-profit-y 501c3 ever, which means donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. I mean, that means it for all the 501c3s, but especially ours. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No-Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Tyler Quattrochi. Thanks, Tyler. As you will remember, our little hero this week is named Lance, and Lance is unfortunately among the many athletes who suffer career-ending injuries before they even ever, have careers. But Lance's injury was unique. You know how everyone sort of has an animal they look like? I've always thought I look a bit rodent-y. But now, after Lance's injury, he saw people exclusively as the animals that they looked like for all of it, which on its own is maybe manageable. But the thing is, he also sees animals as, people too. So it's kind of flipped, which gets him into some interesting predicaments, but that is for tomorrow on Herds on Herds. I don't know. That sounds like a podcast or something. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We'll find out tomorrow.